When my son told me I wasn't invited to Christmas dinner in the house I secretly owned, I smiled, walked to my car, and made one phone call that would change everything. By New Year's Eve, they were standing in the snow with eviction papers, and that was just the beginning of the lesson they'd never forget. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comment. The words came out of nowhere, slicing through the warm December air like a blade through silk. "Dad, I need to tell you something about Christmas." I looked up from the photo album spread across Tyler's coffee table, pictures of his mother, my late wife Rebecca, smiling at various Christmases past, her famous gingerbread houses, her hand-knitted stockings, the way she'd make everyone wear matching pajamas for the family photo, even when Tyler turned 16 and complained it was embarrassing. "What about Christmas?" I asked, already sensing the shift in his tone. That careful, rehearsed quality that told me he'd been practicing this conversation in his head. Tyler sat down across from me, his hands clasped together like he was about to deliver bad news at a funeral. The late afternoon sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his riverside townhouse, catching the crystal chandelier that had cost me $8,000 when Natasha decided their dining room needed something with presents. "Natasha's family is coming in from Boston," he began, not meeting my eyes. "Her parents, her brother and his wife, her Aunt Constance. It's going to be a full house." I waited. There was more coming. I could feel it in the way he kept adjusting his wedding ring, spinning it around his finger like a nervous tell. "The thing is," he paused, cleared his throat, "they have very specific ideas about how Christmas should be, traditional New England style. Natasha's been planning the menu for weeks. Oyster stuffing, crown roast, brandy-soaked fruitcake. Her mother's been sending her recipes from their family cookbook." "Sounds elaborate," I said carefully, still not understanding where this was going. "It is, and Dad, I know this is going to sound bad, but," another pause, longer this time, "they'd prefer if it was just immediate family this year. Natasha's immediate family, I mean." The words hung in the air between us like smoke. I stared at my son, this 32-year-old man I'd raised alone after Rebecca died, who I'd put through Cornell, whose townhouse I'd helped purchase, whose life I'd funded in ways he didn't even know about yet. "I'm not immediate family?" The question came out quieter than I intended. Tyler's face flushed. "You know what I mean, Dad. It's just, Natasha's mother is very particular about these things. She has this vision of how Christmas should be, and adding more people would throw off the seating arrangement, the portions, the whole dynamic." "The dynamic," I repeated the word slowly, tasting its bitter flavor. "Please don't make this harder than it already is." Tyler stood up, pacing toward the windows. "It's one Christmas. We can celebrate together the day after. Just you and me. We'll do our own thing." I looked around the living room, taking inventory in a way I'd never done before. The Italian leather sofa, $12,000, charged to my Amex when Natasha said their old furniture was too shabby for entertaining. The Persian rug beneath our feet, $9,000, purchased during their honeymoon trip to Istanbul that I'd also funded. The smart TV mounted on the wall, the designer bookshelf filled with leather-bound volumes neither of them had ever read, the abstract sculpture in the corner that looked like twisted metal garbage, but cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. Every piece of it, every expensive, carefully curated piece of their picture-perfect life, bought with my money. "One Christmas," I said, standing slowly. My knees protested. 68 years old, and I still felt every one of those years in moments like this. "After your mother died, how many Christmases did we spend alone, Tyler?" "Just you and me, Dad." 14, I continued, not letting him interrupt. 14 Christmases where I made sure you never felt alone. Never felt like we were less of a family just because she was gone. I learned to make her gingerbread houses from scratch. Do you remember that? I watched YouTube videos for hours trying to get the royal icing right because I knew how much you loved them. I remember, His voice was barely audible. And now Natasha's mother's seating arrangement is more important than that. It's not about importance. It's about, he stopped, seeming to realize there was no good way to finish that sentence. I walked to the entryway where I'd left my coat. A simple wool blend from Macy's, nothing like the Canada Goose parka hanging next to it that I'd bought Tyler last Christmas. He'd mentioned wanting one, so I'd spent $800 without blinking, because that's what fathers do. That's what I thought fathers did. Where are you going? Tyler followed me, his voice edged with panic now. Dad, come on, don't leave like this. We can talk about it. Talk about what? I turned to face him, my hand on the doorknob. About how I'm not good enough for Natasha's family Christmas. About how my presence would throw off her mother's precious dynamic. That's not what I said. But it's what you meant. I opened the door. Cold December air rushed in, carrying the scent of snow and wood smoke from someone's fireplace. Outside, the streets of Hartford's Riverside neighborhood glowed with Christmas lights. Perfect houses filled with perfect families, having perfect holidays. Dad, please, enjoy your traditional New England Christmas, Tyler. I hope the oyster stuffing is everything you dreamed it would be. I pulled the door closed behind me, cutting off whatever he was about to say. My hands were shaking as I walked to my truck, parked on the street because their two-car garage was full of Natasha's BMW and Tyler's Audi. Both leases I'd co-signed because their credit wasn't quite good enough on its own. The drive home took 20 minutes, but it felt like hours. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, looking for the moment where I could have said something different, something that would have made him realize what he was doing. But the moment never appeared, because Tyler knew exactly what he was doing. He was choosing them over me. My house sat dark and empty on Maple Avenue, a modest colonial in Hartford's South End. Nothing fancy, but mine. Paid off 30 years ago. No mortgage, no debt, just a house that had held a lifetime of memories before Rebecca got sick, and those memories turned bittersweet. I sat in the truck for a long moment after killing the engine, staring at the dark windows. Usually I'd have the Christmas lights up by now. Rebecca always insisted on decorating the first weekend of December, but this year I hadn't bothered. What was the point of Christmas lights when you were spending Christmas alone? Inside, I poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon Maker's Mark, the good stuff I saved for special occasions, and stood at my kitchen counter, looking at the calendar on the wall. December 8th, 1 week until Christmas. 1 week until my son celebrated with his wife's family, while his father sat alone in the dark. The anger started as a small thing, a pilot light in my chest. But as I stood there drinking my bourbon and thinking about everything I'd sacrificed, everything I'd given, every compromise I'd made to be the father Tyler needed after Rebecca died, that pilot light grew into something hotter. I'd raised him alone from age 4, learned to braid hair for his girlfriend's prom because he wanted to surprise her, sat through every parent-teacher conference, every soccer game, every college tour, took out a second mortgage to cover Cornell's tuition because he'd gotten in but the financial aid wasn't enough, cashed out my retirement accounts early, paying the penalty because he'd wanted to go to business school and student loans would have been too stressful. And this was my thanks, excluded from Christmas because my presence might upset Natasha's mother's seating chart. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my banking app. The numbers told a story Tyler didn't know I'd been tracking. The down payment on the townhouse, $65,000, withdrawn from my savings account 3 years ago, just a loan. Dad, we'll pay you back once Natasha's career takes off. Natasha's career. She worked in marketing for a pharmaceutical company, making decent money, but not enough to afford the lifestyle she was determined to live. That's where I came in. The helpful father-in-law with the open wallet. Monthly transfers, $2,200 every month for 3 years. Started as help with the mortgage, then became expected. Automatic transfers from my checking to theirs, like paying a bill. I did the math in my head. $79,200 in mortgage assistance, plus the down payment, plus the furniture, the renovations, the emergency loans that never got repaid. $193,000, almost $200,000 I'd poured into their life while they lived like young royalty, and I shopped at discount grocery stores. The bourbon burned going down, but it felt good, clarifying. I opened my laptop and logged into my email, searching for a specific message I'd filed away months ago. Found it. The deed transfer documents from when I'd bought the townhouse. Not in Tyler's name, not in Natasha's name, because my son's credit score had been garbage 3 years ago, and Natasha's had been worse. They'd needed someone with good credit to actually purchase the property. The plan had been to transfer ownership once they'd established themselves, but that transfer had never happened. I'd kept meaning to do it, kept putting it off, and then I'd just forgotten about it. Or had I? Sitting there in my dark kitchen, I wondered if some part of me had known even then. Some instinct for self-preservation had told me to keep that ownership, just in case. Just in case my son turned out to be the kind of man who'd exclude his father from Christmas dinner. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I had memorized. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Marcus Chen speaking. Marcus, it's Richard. Richard Walsh. Richard, how are you? Been a while since I heard from you. Marcus Chen had been my attorney for 20 years, handled Rebecca's estate when she died, helped me navigate the complicated business of being a widower with a teenage son and too many decisions to make alone. He'd semi-retired last year, but we still had lunch every few months. I need some legal advice, I said, about a property I own. Sure, what's going on? How quickly can someone be evicted from a property if they're not on the deed and there's no formal lease agreement? Silence on the other end. Then, Richard, what are you planning? Justice, I said. I'm planning justice. The next morning arrived cold and clear, frost coating my windows in crystalline pattern. I'd barely slept, spending most of the night at my kitchen table with Marcus on speakerphone, going over the legal details of what I was about to do. The law was clear since Tyler and Natasha weren't on the deed and we'd never established a formal lease agreement. They were legally considered tenants at will. In Connecticut, I could terminate their tenancy with a reasonable notice period. 30 days was standard, but in cases of family situations, judges often allowed flexibility. Are you absolutely sure about this? Marcus had asked me around 2 in the morning. This is your son we're talking about. My son, who uninvited me from Christmas dinner, I'd reply. My son who's taken nearly $200,000 from me and apparently thinks I'm not good enough for his wife's family. Family disputes are messy, Richard. Once you do this, there's no taking it back. Good. Now, in the harsh light of morning, I looked at the documents Marcus had emailed me, a formal notice to quit, giving Tyler and Natasha 30 days to vacate the property, a detailed accounting of all the money I'd loaned them, with the amounts and dates, a copy of the deed showing my ownership. My finger hovered over the print button. This was it, the point of no return. If I printed these documents, served them to my son, our relationship would never be the same. There would be no more Sunday dinners, no more birthday phone calls, no more pretending we were a family. But weren't we already past that point? Tyler had made his choice. He'd picked Natasha's family's comfort over his own father's feelings. He'd calculated the value of my presence at Christmas dinner and found it lacking. I pressed print. The printer hummed to life, spitting out pages. Notice to quit, financial accounting, property deed. Each page another nail in the coffin of our relationship. I gathered the documents, slid them into a manila envelope, and drove back to Rivers. If this story reminded you of the injustices you've seen, follow the channel and turn on notifications, because wherever justice is delayed, a new revenge story begins. Tyler's townhouse looked different in the morning light, less impressive somehow. I could see the places where the paint was already starting to peel near the roofline. The front step had a crack I'd noticed last time, but never mentioned. For all its expensive finishes and designer furniture, it was still just a house, and it was my house. I rang the doorbell at 8:47 a.m. Natasha answered, still in her silk pajamas, her blonde hair perfect, despite the early hour. She'd probably already been up for an hour doing yoga and drinking her $17 green smoothie. "Richard?" She managed to sound both surprised and annoyed. "Tyler didn't mention you were coming by?" "Tyler doesn't know." I held up the manila envelope. "I need to give you both something." "Is he here?" "He's getting ready for 4. She didn't move to let me in. "Can this wait? We're both running late." "No," I said simply. "It can't wait." Something in my tone must have registered, because she stepped back, allowing me into the entryway. The smell of expensive coffee filled the air. Tyler appeared at the top of the stairs, tying his tie. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "Come down here, please, both of you." They exchanged glances, that married couple telepathy that said volumes without words. They thought I was here to apologize, to beg for an invitation to Christmas dinner, to make it easier for them. Tyler came down the stairs, his expression carefully neutral. "Dad, if this is about yesterday, it's about a lot of things." I pulled the documents from the envelope, "but mostly, it's about this." I handed Tyler the notice to quit. He read it, his face going pale. "What is this?" "Read it carefully, son. It's a formal eviction notice." "Eviction?" Natasha snatched the paper from Tyler's hand. "You can't evict us from our own home." "Your home?" I pulled out the deed. "This document says otherwise. The property at 847 Riverside Drive is owned by Richard James Walsh. That's me. You two have been living here as tenants at will for 3 years. Tyler's hands were shaking. "Dad, this is insane. You said you'd transfer the deed once we got established." I said a lot of things. I said I'd help you out temporarily. I said the monthly payments were just until you got on your feet. But temporary became permanent, didn't it? And my help became expected. We have rights. Natasha's voice had gone shrill. "You can't just kick us out." "Actually, I can. Connecticut law is very clear on this. You're not on the deed. We never established a formal lease. And I'm giving you 30 days notice. That's more than generous." Tyler sank onto their expensive sofa, the one I'd bought. "Dad, please, we can talk about this. Yesterday was a mistake. I see that now. You're invited to Christmas dinner, okay? Crisis averted. We don't need to do this." "Yes, we do." I gathered the papers back up. "Because this isn't about one Christmas dinner, Tyler. This is about 3 years of taking me for granted. 3 years of treating me like an ATM machine with a pulse. 3 years of me sacrificing while you two lived like you were wealthy. We'll pay you back." Tyler jumped up. "Every penny. We'll set up a payment plan." "Will? With what money?" I gestured around the room. "The money you spend on bottles of wine that cost more than my weekly grocery budget, the money that goes to Natasha's spa treatments, and your golf club membership." Natasha's face had gone from pale to flushed. "This is financial abuse. We'll sue you." "Please do." I smiled. "I'd love to see you explain to a judge how you're entitled to live rent-free in a house I own while excluding me from family holidays, because I'm not sophisticated enough for your parents." Tyler's face crumbled. "I never said that. You didn't have to. Natasha's family has very specific ideas. It would throw off the dynamic." I got the message loud and clear, son. I'm not good enough. I'm the embarrassing blue-collar dad who needs to be hidden away when the Boston Brahmins come to town. "That's not." Tyler stopped, because we both knew it was exactly that. I walked to the door, then turned back. "You have 30 days. I suggest you use them wisely. Start looking for a place you can actually afford." "Dad, wait." Tyler followed me. "Please, we can fix this. Tell me what you want me to do." "I want you to stand up for yourself," I said quietly. "I want you to be the man your mother and I raised you to be, not the man Natasha is trying to turn you into. But I can't make you do that. You have to choose it yourself. I choose you. His voice broke. I choose you, Dad. Please don't do this. I looked at my son, really looked at him, saw the boy who'd cried in my arms when Rebecca died. The teenager who'd begged me not to sell our house after she was gone because it was the last place he'd seen her alive. The young man who'd promised he'd never forget everything I'd done for him. And I saw the man he'd become. Someone who'd break that promise without a second thought when his wife decided I wasn't suitable company. You already made your choice, Tyler, on December 17th when you told me I wasn't invited to Christmas dinner. Everything that happens after this is just consequences. I pulled the door closed behind me, cutting off his protests. As I walked to my truck, I could hear Natasha screaming at him inside, blaming him probably. Maybe she was right to. My phone rang before I even made it out of the driveway. Tyler, I declined the call. It rang again immediately. Declined again. By the time I got home, I had 17 missed calls and 12 text messages. I read them while sitting in my kitchen, that same spot where I'd made the decision last night. Tyler, Dad, please pick up. Tyler, we need to talk about this. Tyler, Natasha is hysterical. Tyler, this is going to destroy our credit. Tyler, how could you do this to your own son? Tyler, Mom would be ashamed of you. That last one hit like a physical blow. I stared at it for a long moment, feeling the anger rise again. Rebecca would be ashamed. Rebecca, who'd worked 2 jobs to help pay for Tyler's college applications, who'd postponed her own dreams so Tyler could chase his. No, Rebecca would have been ashamed of what Tyler had become. A man who valued social status over family loyalty. A man who could exclude his widowed father from Christmas dinner without seeing anything wrong with it. I typed back a single message. Your mother would be ashamed of you for forgetting where you came from. Then I blocked his number. Christmas came and went in a blur of silence. I spent it alone, as predicted, eating leftover Chinese food and watching old movies. No gingerbread houses, no matching pajamas, no warmth or laughter or family. Just me and my anger, keeping each other company. On December 28th, Marcus called. Richard, I need to tell you something. Tyler hired a lawyer. Of course he did. They're trying to argue adverse possession, claiming they've lived there long enough to have ownership rights. I laughed. It sounded harsh even to my own ears. 3 years. Connecticut requires 15 years of continuous possession for adverse possession claims. His lawyer should know that. They're also trying to argue that your monthly payments constituted a gift, not a loan, and therefore you can't demand repayment. Let them try. I have bank records showing every transfer. I have text messages where Tyler promised to pay me back. I have emails about the temporary nature of the arrangement. There's one more thing. Marcus paused. They're claiming elder abuse, saying you're mentally unstable and making irrational decisions. The anger crystallized into something cold and sharp. Elder abuse. It's a common tactic in family property disputes. Paint the older party as incompetent or mentally diminished. Judges take it seriously. Good, I said, because when we get to court, I'm going to present 3 years of financial records showing exactly how mentally competent I am, how I've been subsidizing their luxury lifestyle while living on a modest pension, how I've been the one being abused financially, emotionally, and now legally. Richard, I have to ask, is this really about the money, or is it about something else? I looked around my empty kitchen at Rebecca's recipe box on the counter still filled with her handwritten cards, at the calendar on the wall with December 20th. Christmas, alone, at the life I'd built and the son I'd raised and the family that had somehow crumbled despite all my efforts to hold it together. It's about respect, I said finally. It's about teaching my son that actions have consequences, that you can't treat people like disposable commodities and expect them to keep loving you unconditionally. Even if the consequence is losing him forever. He lost me first, Marcus. I'm just making it official. The Hartford County Courthouse smelled like old wood and broken family. I sat on a bench outside courtroom 4C, watching lawyers in expensive suits hurry past with their briefcases and their billable hours. Marcus sat beside me, reviewing his notes one final time. "They're going to try to paint you as vindictive," he said quietly. "A bitter old man punishing his son for a minor slight. Let them try." The courtroom doors opened and Tyler emerged with his attorney, a sharp-looking woman in her 40s named Patricia Greenwood. Behind them came Natasha, dressed in a conservative navy suit that probably cost more than my monthly pension. She'd traded her usual flashy style for something demure, calculated to win sympathy. Tyler looked terrible, dark circles under his eyes, his suit hanging loose like he'd lost weight. Good. Maybe sleepless nights would teach him something about consequences. "Mr. Walsh." Patricia Greenwood approached us with a professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm hoping we can resolve this before we go in front of Judge Morrison. My clients are willing to discuss a settlement." "I'm listening," I said, though I already knew I wouldn't accept whatever they offered. "They'll agree to a structured repayment plan for the money you claim they owe. 24 months, interest. In exchange, you'll transfer the deed as originally promised and drop the eviction proceedings." I pretended to consider it. "And Christmas dinner?" Patricia blinked. "Excuse me? Will I be invited to Christmas dinner? Since we're negotiating terms of our family relationship now." Her smile tightened. "Mr. Walsh, this is a legal matter, not a family therapy session." "That's where you're wrong, Miss Greenwood. This is entirely a family therapy session. It's just taking place in a courthouse instead of a therapist's office." Tyler stepped forward, his voice desperate. "Dad, please, we can't afford to move. Natasha's pregnant." The words hit me like a bucket of ice water. I looked at Natasha, saw the barely visible bump beneath her carefully chosen suit. 3 months, maybe 4. A grandchild. My first grandchild. For a moment, the anger wavered. I pictured Rebecca, imagined her joy at becoming a grandmother, imagined her voice in my head. "Richard, be reasonable. It's a baby, your grandchoppy." Then I pictured that baby growing up, hearing stories about Grandpa Richard, the crazy old man who got kicked out of Christmas dinner. I pictured Tyler teaching his child the same lessons Natasha had taught him, that some people are worth more than others, that family is conditional, that respect is optional when it's inconvenient. "Congratulations," I said flatly. "That changes nothing." Natasha's carefully composed expression cracked. "You'd make your pregnant daughter-in-law homeless? What kind of monster are you? The kind you created when you decided I wasn't good enough to sit at your Christmas table. It was one dinner." Her voice rose, echoing in the courthouse hallway. "One dinner and you're destroying our entire lives." "Funny," I said. "That's exactly how it felt when you excluded me. Like my entire life as Tyler's father meant nothing compared to your mother's seating chart." "Ms. Walsh, please." Patricia put a hand on Natasha's arm, trying to calm her down, but Natasha was past caring about strategy. "You want to know the truth?" She jerked away from her attorney. "Fine. Yes, I told Tyler you couldn't come to Christmas dinner because my parents are sophisticated people who summer in Martha's Vineyard and winter in Boca, because they expect intelligent conversation about art and literature, not stories about factory work and union strikes." "Natasha, stop." Tyler tried to intervene, but she was on a roll now. "You embarrass us, Richard. You show up in your discount store clothes, you talk too loud. You drink beer from the bottle instead of wine from a glass. You're a reminder of everything Tyler's trying to rise above. So yes, I excluded you. I'd do it again, because some people just don't fit in certain social circles." The hallway had gone silent. Other people waiting for their court sessions were staring now, watching this family drama unfold like spectators at a car crash. I looked at my son. "And you let her say these things about me?" Tyler's face was red. Dad, she didn't mean. Yes, and the worst part is, you agree with her. You just don't have the courage to say it out loud. All rise. The bailiff's voice cut through the tension. Judge Morrison was ready for us. Judge Eleanor Morrison was a black woman in her 60s with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. She'd been on the bench for 23 years, and according to Marcus, she had a particular distaste for entitled rich kids who wasted the court's time. This is case number 2824 CV 1884-7, she began, looking over her reading glasses at both parties. Walsh versus Walsh. Mr. Richard Walsh is seeking to evict his son Tyler Walsh and daughter-in-law Natasha Walsh from property located at 847 Riverside Drive. The respondents are contesting the eviction and seeking adverse possession rights to said property. Is that correct? Both attorneys confirmed. What would you do at this point? Write it in the comments. Your thoughts are as important as the story itself. Before we begin, Judge Morrison continued, I want to make something clear. I've read the briefs, and this appears to be a family dispute masquerading as a property case. I understand emotions are running high, but in my courtroom, we deal with facts and law, not feelings and grievances. Understood. We all nodded. Ms. Greenwood, make your case. Patricia stood, smoothing her suit. Your Honor, my clients have lived at 847 Riverside Drive for 3 years, believing it to be their home. Mr. Walsh, the father, provided substantial financial assistance, including the down payment and monthly mortgage payment. These were given as gifts to help young family members establish themselves, a common practice among loving parents. She pulled out a stack of documents. We have no written loan agreements, no promissory notes, no contracts stipulating repayment. Mr. Walsh himself told my clients the payments were help, not loans. He attended family dinners at the property, treated it as his son's home, and gave every indication that he was generously supporting his child's future. Then, following a minor family disagreement over holiday plans, a disagreement that happens in thousands of families every year, Mr. Walsh suddenly declared that all his gifts were actually loans and that my clients were merely tenants subject to immediate eviction. This is vindictive, retaliatory behavior designed to punish his son for the perceived slight of not being invited to one Christmas dinner. Judge Morrison's expression remained neutral, and the adverse possession claim. We acknowledge that 3 years doesn't meet Connecticut's 15-year requirement for adverse possession. However, we're arguing equitable estoppel that Mr. Walsh's actions and representations led my clients to reasonably believe they had ownership rights, and that allowing him to now claim otherwise would be fundamentally unjust. Interesting theory. Mr. Chen. Marcus. Your Honor, my client kept meticulous records of every dollar transferred to his son. Bank statements showing automatic monthly payments of $2,200. Text messages where Tyler Walsh explicitly promises to pay Dad back once we're stable. Emails discussing the temporary nature of the financial arrangement. He presented our evidence, organized in neat binders. This was never a gift. It was a father helping his son with the explicit understanding that repayment was expected. The only reason there's no formal loan agreement is because Mr. Walsh trusted his own son to honor his word. As for the Christmas dinner being a minor disagreement, Miss Walsh, the daughter-in-law, just admitted in the hallway, in front of multiple witnesses, that she excluded Miss Walsh because he embarrasses them and doesn't fit in with their social circle. She called him too loud, too unsophisticated, a reminder of everything her husband is trying to rise above. Judge Morrison's eyebrows rose slightly. Is this true, Ms. Greenwood? Patricia shot Natasha a withering look. Your Honor, statements made in the heat of the moment are often the most honest ones. Judge Morrison finished. Continue, Mr. Chen. Your Honor, this isn't about one Christmas dinner. It's about a pattern of financial exploitation. For 3 years, my client has paid nearly $200,000 to support his son's lifestyle, a lifestyle that includes luxury cars, expensive furniture, and country club memberships, while he himself lives modestly on a fixed pension. Marcus pulled out more documents. Mr. Walsh's monthly retirement income is $3,200, After paying his own bills, he has approximately $400 left for groceries, gas, and personal expenses. Meanwhile, his son and daughter-in-law have a combined income of $173,000 annually, yet they claimed they couldn't afford their own mortgage payment. They could afford it, Marcus continued. They simply chose not to because Dad was willing to pay. And then Dad finally stood up for himself after years of being taken advantage of. They accused him of elder abuse and mental incompetence. Judge Morrison leaned forward. "Mr. Tyler Walsh, stand up, please." Tyler stood, looking like a man facing a firing squad. "How much do you make annually?" "I'm a financial analyst at Prudential. I make $97,000 base plus bonuses. And your wife?" "She's a marketing director. $76,000. So combined approximately $173,000, as Mr. Chen stated. "Yes, Your Honor. And you needed your father, who makes $3,200 a month, to pay your mortgage?" Tyler swallowed hard. "We had other expenses, student loans, car payments." "What kind of cars?" "I drive an Audi A5. Natasha has a BMW X3. Judge Morrison's expression could have frozen lava. "You drive a $50,000 car, and your pregnant wife drives a $40,000 car. But you couldn't afford your own housing." Silence. "Let me tell you something, Mr. Walsh. I grew up in Hartford's North End. My father worked at Pratt & Whitney for 40 years. My mother cleaned houses. They drove used cars and clipped coupons and went without so I could go to law school. You know what they never did? They never made me feel like I was too unsophisticated to sit at their table." Tyler's face had gone pale. "Your father sacrificed nearly $200,000, probably his entire retirement savings, so you could live in a house in Riverside and drive luxury cars. And you repaid that sacrifice by excluding him from Christmas dinner because he embarrassed you in front of your in-laws." "Your Honor, I'm not finished." Judge Morrison's voice cut like steel. "I've been on this bench for 23 years. I've seen a lot of ugly family disputes, but I have rarely seen such breathtaking ingratitude and entitlement as I'm seeing from you and your wife today." She turned to Natasha. "Mrs. Walsh, did you really tell your father-in-law he was too unsophisticated for your parents?" Natasha looked at her lawyer, who gave a microscopic nod. Lying to a judge was a bad idea. Yes, but I was upset." "I didn't mean you meant it," Judge Morrison interrupted. "People rarely say things they don't mean when they're angry. They just say things they normally have the sense to keep to themselves." She looked down at her notes, then back up at both parties. "Here's my ruling. Mr. Richard Walsh is the sole legal owner of 847 Riverside Drive. The respondents are tenants at will. The notice to quit is valid. However, given that Mrs. Walsh is pregnant, I'm extending the eviction timeline to 60 days instead of 30. That gives you 2 months to find suitable housing, Your Honor. Please." Patricia started to object. "I'm not finished, Miss Greenwood. As for the financial claims, I'm ruling that the monthly payments were loans, not gifts. The text messages and emails make that clear. However, I'm not requiring immediate repayment. Miss Tyler Walsh, you will repay your father the full amount of $193,000 over a period of 10 years, with 3% interest. That comes to approximately $2,100 per month." Tyler looked like he might faint. "You can afford it," Judge Morrison said dryly. "Just sell one of those luxury cars and drive something reasonable. Consider it a lesson in living within your means." "But the house," Tyler started. "The house is your father's property. He may do with it as he wishes. If he chooses to sell it, rent it to someone else, or let it sit empty, that's his right as the legal owner." Judge Morrison signed the order with a flourish. "Anything else?" "Your Honor." I stood up. surprising everyone, including Marcus. May I address the court? She looked at me over her glasses. Go ahead, Mr. Walsh. I turned to face Tyler. I'm not doing this to punish you, son. I'm doing this to teach you something your mother and I apparently failed to teach you while you were growing up. Dad, let me finish. You're about to be a father. In a few months, you're going to hold your baby in your arms and feel love like you've never felt before. You're going to promise yourself that you'll do anything for that child, sacrifice anything, give anything. My voice cracked slightly, and I truly hope, that 25 or 30 years from now, when that child is grown and successful, they don't turn around and tell you that you're too embarrassing to invite to dinner, because if they do, you'll finally understand how I felt on December. Tyler was crying now, silent tears running down his face. The money doesn't matter, I continued. I don't care if you ever pay me back. What matters is that you understand what you did, what you threw away for a seating arrangement and your wife's pride. I looked at Natasha, who was staring at the floor. And you, Natasha, I hope you raise your child to value character over social status, to respect the people who love them, regardless of whether they summer in Martha's Vineyard or work factory jobs in Hartford. Judge Morrison was watching me with something that might have been respect. Are you finished, Mr. Walsh? Almost, Your Honor. There's one more thing. I pulled an envelope from my jacket pocket. I had my attorney draw up a document. It's a trust fund for my grandchild, $50,000, to be released when they turn 18 for college or whatever they need. I set it on the table in front of Tyler, because, unlike you, I don't let pride and hurt feelings get in the way of family. That baby is innocent in all this. They deserve a grandfather who'll be there for them, even if their father couldn't figure out how to be a decent son. The courtroom was silent. Tyler picked up the envelope with shaking hands. Your Honor, I'm finished. Judge Morrison nodded slowly. This court is adjourned. I walked out of the courthouse into February sunshine. Hartford was frozen solid. Snow piled along the sidewalks, but the sun felt warm on my face. Marcus caught up with me on the steps. That was quite a performance in there. It wasn't a performance. It was the truth. The trust fund was a nice touch. You planning to follow through with that? I smiled. Already did. Set it up last week. You're a better man than most, Richard. I'm a grandfather, I said, or I will be, in a few months. That baby deserves better than parents who are too proud to admit when they're wrong. We stood there for a moment, watching the city move around us. Then my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I opened it. Subscribe and stay tuned so you don't miss any true revenge story. Sometimes, even silence is the strongest form of revenge. Unknown. Dad, it's Tyler, using Natasha's phone because you blocked mine. I don't know what to say except I'm sorry. You were right about everything. I became someone Mom would be ashamed of. Can we talk? I stared at the message for a long time. Marcus looked over my shoulder. You going to respond? Not yet, I said. Let him sit with it for a while. Let him understand what it feels like to reach out and get silence in return. That's cold, Richard. No, I corrected. It's teaching. There's a difference. 3 weeks later, I was in my kitchen making coffee when someone knocked on my door. I opened it to find Tyler standing on my porch, looking nervous and cold. Can I come in? I stepped aside, letting him enter. He looked around my house like he was seeing it for the first time. The worn furniture, the outdated appliances, the modest, humble space where I'd been living while funding his luxury lifestyle. The house looks nice, he said awkwardly. It's the same as it's always been. You just never noticed before. He flinched, but accepted the hit. I deserve that. I poured 2 cups of coffee and we sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd decided to evict him, where I'd spent sleepless nights calculating the cost of my generosity. Natasha and I found an apartment, Tyler said. 2-bedroom in West Hartford. Nothing fancy, but it's what we can afford. We sold the BMW. She's driving a used Honda now. Good. She's in therapy. We both are, actually. Couples counseling. The therapist said we have some issues with entitlement and boundaries. That's putting it mildly. Tyler wrapped his hands around his coffee mug. I've been thinking a lot about what you said in court, about the baby growing up and treating me the way I treated you. It keeps me up at night. It should. I want to be better, Dad. I want to be the father you were to me. Before I let Natasha's family poison my thinking, I looked at my son, really looked at him, saw the boy I'd raised, underneath the entitled man he'd become. Maybe there was hope for him yet. Then prove it, I said, not with words, with actions. Show me you've learned something from this. How? Start by inviting me to meet my grandchild when they're born. No conditions, no exceptions, no checking with Natasha's parents first. Just a father calling his dad to share good news. Tyler's eyes welled up. I will, I promise. And Tyler, when that baby is old enough to understand, you tell them the truth about what happened. You tell them about the mistakes you made and what they cost. Because the only way they'll learn from your mistakes is if you're honest about making them. He nodded, wiping his eyes. Will you be there when the baby comes? I thought about Rebecca, about her gentle heart and her fierce love for our son, about how she'd forgive him in a heartbeat because that's who she was. But I wasn't Rebecca. I was the parent who'd learned that sometimes love meant letting people face consequences. Ask me again in 6 months. Show me you mean what you're saying. Then we'll talk about me being there. That's fair. He stood to leave, then turned back. Dad, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm going to earn it back, however long it takes. Good, I said, because I've got plenty of time. After he left, I sat at my kitchen table with my coffee and looked at Rebecca's photo on the wall. I know you'd have forgiven him already, I said to her image, but someone's got to teach these kids about consequences. Might as well be me. Her smile seemed to say she understood. 6 months later, August, the hospital waiting room smelled like antiseptic and anxiety. I sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair, reading outdated magazines and checking my phone every few minutes. Tyler had texted me at 3 a.m. She's in labor. It's happening. Please come. I'd thought about making him wait, thought about teaching one more lesson about the cost of taking family for granted. Then I'd gotten dressed and driven to Hartford Hospital, because some things were bigger than pride and hurt feeling. Some things, like meeting your first grandchild, were worth setting aside anger for. The delivery room doors opened and Tyler emerged, still in scrubs, his face transformed by joy and exhaustion and terror. It's a girl, he said, 7 pounds 4 ounces. She's perfect, Dad. She's absolutely perfect. And Natasha? She's good. Tired but good. He hesitated. She wants to see you. She has something to say. I followed him down the hallway to room 314. Natasha was propped up in bed, looking exhausted and softer somehow. The baby was wrapped in a pink blanket in her arms. Richard, she said quietly, thank you for coming. I approached the bed slowly. The baby had dark hair and Tyler's nose. She was perfect, just like he'd said. Would you like to hold her? Natasha asked. I took the baby carefully, feeling that ancient instinct kick in. The weight of new life, the responsibility of another generation. This tiny person who had no idea about the drama and hurt feelings that had brought her family to this moment. We named her Rebecca, Tyler said softly, after Mom. If that's okay with you. I looked down at little Rebecca, at her perfect tiny fingers curled against my chest, at the future we'd all be building together if we could figure out how to forgive and move forward. It's more than okay, I said, my voice thick. Your mother would have loved her. Natasha spoke up, surprising me. Richard, I owe you an apology, a real one, not the courtroom version. I was horrible to you. I said terrible things, and I treated you like you were beneath us, when the truth is, you're twice the person I am. 3 times, Tyler added, earning a weak laugh from his wife. The past 6 months have been humbling, Natasha continued. Living in an apartment 1/10 the size of that townhouse, driving a 10-year-old Honda, working twice as hard, because we don't have your safety net anymore. It's been educational. Good, I said, still holding Rebecca. Welcome to how most people live. I know that now. I know a lot of things now that I should have known before. She looked at Tyler, then back to me. I'd like to start over, if you'll let me. No more pretense, no more social climbing, no more treating you like you're not good enough. Just family. I studied her face, looking for the catch, the angle, the manipulation. But all I saw was exhaustion and something that might have been genuine remorse. We'll see, I said finally. Actions, not words. Show me you mean it. I will. We both will. Little Rebecca made a small sound, her tiny mouth opening in a yawn. I looked down at her, at this new beginning, wrapped in a hospital blanket. You know what your grandmother used to say? I asked Tyler. She said every baby is God's way of telling us the world should go on, that no matter how bad things get, there's always hope for the next generation to do better. She was wise, Tyler said. She was, and she was right. I handed the baby back to Natasha. Rebecca here has a chance to grow up in a family that's learned from its mistakes. That's more than most kids get. Tyler put his hand on my shoulder. Dad, I know I don't have the right to ask this yet, but will you be part of her life? Will you be the grandfather she deserves? I thought about all the anger I'd carried for the past 8 months, the hurt and betrayal and determination to teach lessons through consequences. All of it had been necessary, but maybe now it was time for something else. I'll be here, I said, but on my terms. No more being taken for granted. No more treating me like a walking wallet or an embarrassment. If I'm going to be Grandpa Richard, then I'm going to be respected as Grandpa Richard. Deal, Tyler said immediately. And if Rebecca ever asks why Grandpa doesn't come to family events, you're going to tell her the truth about what happened, about the mistakes you made, about the consequences you faced, because that's how she'll learn not to make the same mistakes. I promise, Tyler said. Complete honesty. I looked at little Rebecca one more time, sleeping peacefully in her mother's arms, innocent and full of potential, and deserving of a grandfather who'd be there for her, even if her parents had needed a harsh lesson to appreciate what they had. Okay then, I said, let's try this family thing again, but this time, we do it right. 2 years later, Christmas Eve, snow was falling softly on Maple Avenue as I pulled the gingerbread house from the oven. Not quite as perfect as Rebecca's used to be, but close enough. Little Rebecca, now 2 years old and talking nonstop, would love it anyway. Tyler and Natasha were coming for Christmas dinner, just the 4 of us, in my modest house, with the outdated appliances and worn furniture. No fancy decorations, no designer table settings, just family. Real family. The doorbell rang and I heard Rebecca's excited voice. Gamma, Gamma. She couldn't quite say Grandpa yet, but I didn't mind. I opened the door to find my son holding his daughter, both of them bundled against the cold. Natasha stood behind them, holding a casserole dish, her face free of the calculated sophistication she used to wear like armor. Merry Christmas, Dad, Tyler said. Merry Christmas, son. Little Rebecca launched herself at me and I caught her, breathing in that perfect toddler smell of baby shampoo and cookies. Gamma, you make cookie house? I did. Want to help decorate it? Yes, cookie house. We settled into my kitchen, the same place where I'd plotted my son's eviction 2 years ago. But tonight, it was full of laughter and frosting, and a 2-year-old's sticky fingers. Natasha watched me help Rebecca place gumdrops on the roof. You're good at this. Practice, I said. I did this with Tyler every Christmas after his mother died. He loved it. I remember, Tyler said quietly. I'd forgotten how much work you put into making Christmas special for me. That's what parents do. We make things special even when our hearts are breaking. Natasha set down her frosting bag. Richard, I need to tell you something. My parents are in town for Christmas. I felt my shoulders tense. Oh, and I told them they're not invited to our Christmas, that we're spending it with you because you're the grandfather Rebecca needs to know, the man who taught me what real family looks like. I looked at her, searching for the catch. They were upset, she continued. My mother said some things about how I'm throwing away my heritage for a man who works with his hands, about how embarrassing it is. And what did you say? I said that I used to think like that, and it almost destroyed my family. I said that you're worth 100 of their country club friends, and if they can't respect that, they don't need to be in Rebecca's life. Tyler smiled. You should have seen Dad. He was so proud of her. Were they? I asked Natasha. She met my eyes steadily. I don't know. They left angry, but I'm done living my life trying to impress people who judge others by their bank accounts and social connection. I want Rebecca to grow up knowing her grandpa Richard, the man who taught her parents about consequences and forgiveness. Little Rebecca held up a crooked gingerbread wall. Gemma, I fix it? You absolutely fixed it, sweetheart. It's perfect. As I watched my granddaughter decorate cookies with more enthusiasm than skill, I thought about Rebecca, my Rebecca gone now for 10 years. How she'd probably orchestrated all of this from wherever she was watching. The pain and the lessons and the long road back to family. You know what your grandmother would say right now? I asked Tyler. What? She'd say we finally got it right. Tyler put his arm around Natasha, pulled Rebecca onto his lap, and smiled at me across the kitchen table. Yeah, Dad, I think we finally. Outside, snow continued to fall on Hartford, on Maple Avenue, on a modest house where a family broken and mended and stronger for it, celebrated Christmas together, and somewhere, I was certain, Rebecca was smiling. Thank you for watching. If this story showed you a different face of justice, like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next revenge story.